All right, it is February 8th, 2023. I am in San Diego, California, attending Distributech, the largest grid show in North America. If you're following on LinkedIn, you can see all my postings. I've had too many meetings, and day one and day two is looking the same way, and day three. So this is my break of the day, and we have a great guest. Before we get going, I want to point out this logo behind me, which is an unofficial showing of the new CMG logo after our merger, where we have now optimization software utilizing deep learning, machine learning for all kinds of technologies in markets, and also marketing services in addition to our traditional consulting. So anyway, just wanted to point that out. You know, we could talk more about that. Let's ask our own John Sibley Butler to make an intro on music.
When I grew up a dream of being a cowboy and loving cowboy ways, showing the life of my high-riding hero, threw away my childhood days, learned all the ways. A modern day drifter, don't you hold on to nothing too long. Oh, worn out salad, oh, worn out memories, nowhere, no place to go. Heroes have always been cowboys, still are seen, sadly in search of, and one step in back of themselves, slow moving dream. Sadly in search of, and one step in back of themselves, slow moving dream.
All right. Well done, Johnny. John Butler, how are you, sir?
Well, it seems like me that humanitarian issue keeps barking at us. What happened at Turkey is just gut-wrenching. And you look at the winter coming in, and you look at non-housing, and you look at the rumbling of the earth, and you just sit there and you say, what is going on and how can they make it through? I've thought a lot about that, talked a lot about that. I've got some good Turkish friends here in Austin, and they're up and about. That's trying to do that. Otherwise, we've got the president's speech last night. I thought was very, very good. I thought he did a good job of actually laying things out. I was impressed with his demeanor. I was impressed the way that he entertained and he encompassed the rest of the Republican colleagues. And I was impressed by the number of times that both sides of the aisles really stood up on his points. You know, I'm not too much of a union guy. Here in Texas, when we say union, we mean going to the student union. I think unions kind of delay, they're good, but they delay innovation, delay people from going out and starting their own enterprises, and this kind of delays innovation. But I think he gave a pretty good talk to bring the country together. And now we're looking at how the stock market will respond. And then, of course, we had we got the stuff going on in Russia, but the big news, of course, was the Chinese balloon that went straight across America. And by the way, that couldn't be the first time. And we have a tendency to blame a party. I'm sure that when the last president was in, they had Chinese balloon. But the question is, what for? We know that it's for the gathering of information, and it's telling us how we're really moving rapidly to a technology, digital kind of economy. Because everything it flew over is designed for the digitization of wealth and how wealth is created. They might have been looking at property because the Chinese are buying lots of property also in America. But the day-to-day life goes on. We got the Super Bowl coming up, Mardi Gras is coming up. So intertwined in the humanitarian issues is a sameness that keeps us together, whether it's the Super Bowl, whether it's Mardi Gras in the city of my birth. So it's a sadness and a joy all at the same time. And in between this, then the economy is going, people are buying, and it's very, very interesting. It reminds me of wartime when, you say, well, the only thing I think about Vietnam is when I have somebody over there. But the humanitarian issue of what Turkey is going through, and then what's going on in Europe is just gut-wrenching. But as I said before, we're living in interesting time, but we've always lived in interesting times. And the question is, how do we get through it? And I think that the Turkey situation is really, really just gut-wrenching. It is a natural earth that's, survival of the fittest, or whatever you call it, that's taking lives, and the lives continue to grow. And you wonder how, as a human being, they're living in such conditions.
Sure thing. Llewellyn.
Well, I hardly have anything to add to Johnny's monologue.
Thank you, sir.
I would like to say that we all feel very strongly about the situation in Turkey. My wife, Linda, and I were in Turkey during an earthquake once. It was the only really big earthquake I've experienced. And the sense of the liquid nature of the earth when it's happening is truly extraordinary. I was more curious than frightened at the time, but in hindsight, I realized how fortunate we were. Nothing fell on us. But our hearts go out. But you contrast that, an act of nature, an act of God, if you will, with what is going on in Ukraine, acts of men, evil men, that seem so unnecessary. Life is hard enough in the natural way, as a poet said. So why do we have to endure this kind of imbecilic behavior by the Russian leader? It's appalling. About the State of the Union, I thought Biden was complete. I don't terribly like this ritual every year of the State of the Union. I don't like the sideshows, all these people in the galleries identified, and the endless seeking applause. I was hoping for something a bit more transcendental, more uplifting. And I thought that the Republican response was appalling, because there was not one fact in it. There was no alternative program. There was simply a lot of anger, a lot of denunciation of the Democrats without one satisfying suggestion of what way the Republicans would go if they're in power. And I'd love to discuss with Johnny at some time unions. I was president of the Newspaper Guild at one time. I agree with him that they're very bad for innovation, but they're remarkably good for an awful lot of workers.
All right. Well, I want to take you back. I want to take you back to what we do here, which is digital transformation. And I also join the sentiments around what's happening in Turkey, and we hope that somehow things can get back to a normal course of action, and obviously what's going on in the Ukraine and other places. I want to, I'm a distributor, and I can tell you that I'm jazzed. I want to hear from our guest speaker in a moment here, but the amount of technology that is being unleashed at Distributech this year is incredible. It's sort of like we're finally back from COVID. There are roughly 12,000 people. I've literally have had at least in 2 days, 25 meetings with at least 5 or 6 people in each meeting. The amount of exchange and transactions that are being made is just off the charts. So I have to report that I in an industry that is so critical to the future of our society, the power industry, things are incredibly back to normal. with a great sense of transformation and acceleration into digitalization, decarbonization, decentralization. And so given that, I think that we have a great guest today that lives sort of on the edge of the foam of the wake. And he's a very smart guy. And I want him to, say hello first, and then I'll introduce him formally. So Panos Moutafis, if I'm saying that right, you are a Greek person, also an American. Tell me, how are you doing today? And say hello real quick to the team.
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm not an American yet, maybe in a couple of years. Getting there. But I have been living in Texas for almost 13 years now. So minus the accent, I'm Texan at this point. And I'm very grateful to be here and join the conversation. And the most important thing, I do want to echo the sympathy and the shock about what happened in Turkey. And, Greece is just right next to it. We do have earthquakes as well. And we had a big one many, many years ago when I was still very, very young. And I do know how devastating this can be. So that's the main thing I want to say.
Absolutely. Let me for the audience that don't know you and those who will listen to this and watch it later, Panos is the CEO and co-founder of Zenus. Sort of Zenus is the way to think about it. Zenus. It's a great company that he's running. He's going to tell us more about it. He's going to be with us. He's from Llewellyn's and John Butler standard, still a young man, but a very bright one. He before this, he was a research assistant in the computational biomedicine lab at the University of Houston. He actually happened to get a PhD in computer science from the University of Houston, and he has a Bachelor of Science in statistics, something that Dr. Butler loves very much, from Athens University. So welcome to the show, Panos.
Thank you for having me. And as a John's reaction, I absolutely love data. So I really, really love data.
So tell us real quick to set the stage with our conversation with you. Tell us what Zenus is trying to do, and what's your vision of a totally, AI, machine learning, deep learning driven world.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for the opportunity. What we started doing and what we're doing right now and where we're going, it's kind of different. But there's one thing that remains the same, that regardless of how we express it, at the core of it, we are analyzing and trying to understand the behavior of people in physical spaces primarily, but also virtual. And we do that in lots of different ways. One of the primary ways of doing it is analyzing human faces. And the distinction I'm always trying to make, because people usually have two reactions. They'll say, yes, I love it, face recognition. I can unlock my phone easier. I can unlock my Surface easier. I love it. It's easy. I can go to the airport, frictionless. I love it. Or you'll have another group of people that usually has a louder voice that will say, that's crazy, that's going to be surveillance, everybody will know where I am, they will monitor me and so forth. We're trying to be a little bit in the middle, where we say, yes, there's potential for harm, depending on how you use the technology, is very, very powerful. But also there's a lot of potential for good. So you always have to take a measured approach. And we distinguish the technologies in two different ways. You have face recognition, where you can identify a person from their face. But when you're looking at somebody's face, you can infer other things. You can infer age, biological sex, that there's an actual human person in the view. So we know that there's presence counting. You can tell dwell time, the way they're moving around, facial analysis for sentiment to understand how people are feeling and so forth. And if you focus on this portion of the analytics, where you're just analyzing in aggregate, anonymously, how many people are there, how are they feeling, are they having a good time, are they staying, are they leaving, the entire behavior of the humans, and you do it in a specific way, and I will get to that, what this way is, you are taking away all of the risk, in our opinion, that comes with computer vision technologies, but you have to implement it right. And the last thing I want to point out is that, there are some companies that will say, we just develop the technology. It is not our responsibility how it is being used. The market, the regulations, the government bodies will decide. We're trying to advocate, yes, regulations are very, very important because it creates clarity to the market, what you can do, what you cannot do. But as the people developing the technology, you have responsibility on building in safeguards to protect privacy, on building in the right tools that by default it cannot be abused, or at least mitigate the issue. And that's the approach we have taken it. And on that path, you are going to give up revenue. You are going to make some people less happy because they want to use technology in lots of different ways. But that's a pain you have to take if you want to do things right.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Johnny?
Yeah, I find this very interesting. And I need to take you back to about 1800s, 1835, to Saint Simon's work and Auguste Comte's work on a book called Essays on Social Physics, Man and his development, then the development of his faculties. Social physics is what you do now, and that is putting mathematical equations to the movement of people. So it is an old discipline. Very, very quickly, Saint Simon developed it as social physics. Then Auguste Comte came in the 1800s, and they argued over the data that was developed to do this. So social physics became sociology as a discipline. And now Pentland, who's at MIT, wrote a book called Social Physics that brings it all together. One of the things that I'll ask, and over the years, the social physicists now, they are doing it in computer science, and of course they're really doing it in statistics now. My question is, what theories do you have? There are so many theories about the movement of people that were developed prior to the big data. Sociology as a discipline, social psychology as a discipline. So I think all marketing now is just psychology and sociology. So do you take advantage? Have you heard of the great book on social physics, Predicting Man and His Facilities by Mathematical Formulas? Have you heard of that?
I have not heard the book, but I can guess what it is talking about.
This is
to some degree, yes.
35. Well, I'm not allowed to charge tuition on this program. My first understanding, my second question then, we like to apply what you call social physics to business models, okay? And business models require the interaction of mathematics and what people do and how we improve things, like we're doing on the internet and et cetera. Because if not, it's garbage in and then it's garbage out. So my question is, when you say that you use facial recognition to look at what people would do, that's certainly right out of Auguste Comte, 1835. My question is, what theories do you develop to explain? What are your hypotheses going in, or are you just doing very qualitative work and letting the hypotheses evolve from the data themselves?
So
how do you do that?
Sorry. First of all, can I pay tuition in barbecue? Because here in Texas, we have very good barbecue. But joking aside, because I always love a good meal, we're doing a little bit of both. So you usually have one of two cases. And maybe I can use an example as the best way to illustrate. So we worked with an airport. And the airport, they have these flight information displays where you can go and you can see which gate your plane is leaving from. So the first question was, are people still using them? Or is everybody having a phone and they're looking at their app, so nobody's using them anymore? So the first thing we wanted to capture was put a couple of cameras in a couple of displays and understand what is the traffic walking by and what percentage of people actually stop and look, and how long they spend. So that was the first thing we were answering. Are they still being used or not? Mm-hmm. The second thing we looked at was, and this came from the data without asking a question, just looking at the data, mm-hmm. We saw that usually the older the demographic group, like the older the age group, the more time people were spending in front of the screen and the less happy they were getting about it. So the more time you were spending in front, the less happy you were about it. The underlying hypothesis was that maybe there's too much information and the font size is not very clear and the whole layout needs some improvement. So what we did, we created another version that is much simpler, easier to use and understand. And we ran the same experiment, same duration, same locations for another 1 month. And we saw a very, very big difference between the new layout and the older layout. The sentiment scores, the satisfaction was much, much higher. The dwell time between demographic groups shrunk almost to no difference. And this was a way of letting the data tell us a story, forming a hypothesis, testing the hypothesis, validating the results. It doesn't always work this way, but if you keep having this mentality of experimenting and iterating, you get very, very good results. And one of the coolest things, in my opinion, is that this increases inclusivity, which means you can create experiences that appeal to all people in a better way, because at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want to have a good experience for all humans. You don't want to have, separation.
So it sounds like to me your theory is network analysis, to put a theoretical model on it. And network analysis is now being interacted with in biology. We know that in terms of, you look at biological networks, social networks spread just like a biological network of cancer. We know that physical networks spread just like the social networks of human beings. So it's very, very exciting for two reasons. We should be able to predict the nature of crime. We should be able to predict how people will purchase things, which is, of course, marketing. But more importantly, we're in a situation where there's so much data. We really need great theorists to understand what's going on. If not, it's just simply data in. So I'm excited about what you've done. I put my faculty notes on the chat section, and I expect for you to look at them. I have been known to call out guests and give them an examination on the book.
I love it.
I would put some more in there. So thank you very much. But I got some more questions. I did to my distinguished African American Llewellyn King, who was born in Africa, and I'm just pretending because I was born in New Orleans.
Thank you very much, Professor. Retired professor. I had not realized how elderly you are.
I do.
And Panos, you mentioned, because anybody who's involved in data collection runs into the issue of privacy. And it is always said, much as you said, that we have to build in safeguards. But the fact is, since the computer age started, privacy has really evaporated, and we have a much greater tolerance for a lack of privacy than we used to have. It's almost generational. Young people tend to be quite prepared to go on the web and expose their most intimate thoughts and secrets, which simply didn't happen. They let it all hang out, so to speak. So we're getting less privacy, almost to the point where it will be archaic. It'll be something in the past that there was even such a thing as privacy. I was in Abu Dhabi and recently, and the first thing you see at the airport is they take your picture, facial recognition, which is something we thought only happened in China, but apparently it's spreading around the world. Well, once your picture is being captured, your whereabouts are easily established in all kinds of public places, right? Where without your permission, you can be identified. Is that correct?
Not really, not entirely. And let me offer some context. There are some technological limitations to do surveillance at this scale, first. But second, there are some privacy regulations limitations on doing these kind of approaches. On the technological limitations, if you are doing face recognition, which we do not, by the way, we do not do face recognition, we're doing the analysis without identification. But when you do face recognition, the larger the database, the lower the accuracy. So when you go, if your accuracy is, for example, 90% with 1,000 people, if you go to 10,000 people, it might drop to 70. If you go to 100,000 people, it might drop to 60. and it drops exponentially. It actually drops exponentially because the more people you're trying to look for, the higher chances that two of them will look alike. And then you have, when was the picture taken and so forth. So it becomes a little bit harder to actually do it in big numbers, unless you use a phone, and then you can restrict how many people you're searching for in your database because you know the location of people. So when you start adding multiple sources, it becomes a more feasible way to get into this situation that I think nobody wants to be in. And this is where regulation comes in place that says you cannot store a person's face unless you have explicit consent. And the consent has to say that I give consent to be scanned. This is how long my data will be kept for. I have the right to be forgotten, and I can delete my data, and it will be used only for this case. And in Europe has a very strong privacy framework. South Africa and other countries like Brazil, some states in the US, Illinois, Texas, Washington, California, they start having these kind of regulations. And they are the corresponding fines to prevent this kind of uses and use cases of the technology. I don't know if you know, but Facebook, I think they paid $450 million in Illinois for their face tagging algorithm. Google paid $180 million in Illinois, and I think they are both being sued right now in Texas. And they have taken off this functionality from their platforms. And IBM has pulled out from face recognition. Google has pulled out. Microsoft is pulling out as well. So you get this that the society, it's a correction where some companies were unregulated and they overstepped for whatever reason. And right now there is this correction that happens in the system, like every system. And I'm sure John has a book for that where.
Well, let me just say this, Llewellyn, because Llewellyn is right. I choose to turn my Google location on. I can tell you everywhere I've been, every store I have been to, right? Everywhere based on because I use it for my income taxes, and I use it for where I go. I can choose to do that. And that also means that if I were to become a criminal, they could turn my phone on and they know exactly where I am. So Llewellyn is that so many Americans do not know that on their cell phone, they have an option. If you have an iPhone, you can turn it off or you can turn it on. And mine is so great. I can ask myself, okay, did I really go to Barnes & Noble? I know exactly where I went. I know exactly how many miles that I traveled. So from the business point of view, it's very, very good, to do that. So Llewellyn is right. We are in a situation now where, and I know that I can turn your television on, with your smart television on now, and watch you. I know that I can turn your cell phone on if I want to spy on you. But on the other hand, in theory, we need a judge's, need to be before a court of law if I wanted to. So what Llewellyn is asking is, I think, is how do we manage the reality of non-privacy? Because most Americans don't understand when they buy this telephone. You know what I mean? People know exactly where they're going. Now, I can use it as an analyst. I can write an article on it. I don't need their names. As a matter of fact, this is what Pentland did in his recent book about 4 years ago on social physics. He didn't have to ask anybody any questionnaires at all. He got their location data. He got their credit card data. He got their geographical data, and he talked about what everybody did in San Francisco and how they spent their money without asking a person one thing. I think also, Panos, we could do a census in America now every week if we wanted to. Llewellyn is right. The big data are powerful when you know how to use it.
But I want to posit a thought here, which is an incomplete one. But I've been, like many other people who are not primarily technologists, worrying or concerned about the rise of artificial intelligence and all of this technology, all of this traceability, which now Johnny likes and which I'm less enthusiastic about. But I wonder whether AI and the next generation of gadgetry won't actually be able to be used to defend the individual. So far, data seems to be exploiting the individual. Maybe it can be turned around to be a defense, a cocoon of security, and that we can use, I was once giving a speech in London about attracting American corporations to America. And the question I got from most people was, but it's so litigious, you'll be in court all the time. And I said, well, you might want to take people to court. It goes both ways. It's a tool you have, as well as maybe you'll find yourself vulnerable in some peculiar situation. And I wondered what point in time AI will turn from being this, giving us the sense that it is out of our reach and out of control, to us getting a sense that it is an additional tool, as the cell phone is a tool.
In my opinion, we do have the technology to do that now. It is a matter of humans, in my opinion, we're the slowest to adapt to changes. And technology seems to be accelerating. And every innovation we're having, it's the building block for the next thing. And it accelerates, in my opinion. And I have been saying that the person that will live forever has already been born. That's what I have been saying for the last few years, because it accelerates. And I can mention a couple of examples, a couple of different examples on how we can do it.
I commiserate for that poor devil.
Well, I would like to be one of them. But there are different ways to protect privacy. I will talk a little bit more about how we do it, and then I can tell about how the cell phones can do it, and how the TV can do it, and all of these things.
And how smart houses can do it, and how smart buildings can do it. Oh, by the way, since you mentioned it, and this is okay. I'm not going to assign this to you because you knew that I had it. But let me get on Llewellyn's thing again and just ask another question and bring it back to smart electricity, smart cities, and et cetera. And the business models for smart cities. When houses are smart, we have a lot of data. We might be able to predict, as I like to say, you do select if all of the houses that lights came on at 12 o'clock at night, and maybe they have some kind of medical problem. We may be able to select if when the lights go out, and then the travel agency knows that they're not home, so they can fund. I mean, they can really go after them for vacation time, right? They'll know when they're at football games and et cetera. So how do you see smart houses and smart cities? Of course, your facial recognition would come off of smart houses, smart cities, but take the totality of everything being smart, from sidewalks to telephone poles, to automobiles, to your bedroom, to televisions. How do you see that enhancing what you do?
I want to talk about how it's enhancing what we do. I want to talk about on a higher level about it will be a future of abundance. I really believe that it will be a future of abundance, and everything will be focused on experience. That's it. So we're going to be at the stage sooner than later that you don't have to worry about healthcare anymore. You don't have to worry about having a roof over your head. You will not have to worry about food. It will all be experiences and human feelings, and how we enjoy life, and how we can think more and release our creativity. That's what I think is going to happen.
What about the great book, The Signal and the Noise? When we looked at our prediction efforts, there's a lot of noise, white noise, as you know, in the prediction. But at the end of the day, it's still regression toward the mean. It's still the regression line is still looking at it in different kind of ways. How do you think that we can, figure out the noise that's happening when it comes to a prediction? I think this is a new qualitative science without theory. And I think that once we have theory into it, then it'd be much better. So how in your business, if I want to get a contract with you, predict, I used to have just the SAT for college, and they're not too good because I'm very jealous of my people in music, because to go to UT and teach trombone in music, you have to interview. You got to play a trombone. Whereas otherwise we use the test and say, well, maybe they know the math. So how do you see it actually helping things where it was predicting who gets into school? The fact that Andreas might show up with his credit card and it goes through and they say, we don't want your business because a credit card is too bad. Now, insurance companies do this already. So how do you see that, hitting on our everyday life of prediction, from buying insurance to going to school, to travel, going through smart cities? How do you see your model? Because I think it's fascinating, your company impacting that in the future.
And we haven't even talked about how we do it, which I think is going to be very, very relevant to the discussion of how we have implemented the whole approach. Because we are focusing on, we think, what's decentralizing the compute power and putting the safeguards on privacy and reducing video bandwidth and so forth. But to answer the original question, and I apologize for repeating myself, it will be the experience, which means is I want to go for a trip, which means my behavior and what I like, which flights I like, which routes I like to take, which hotels I like to stay, what is my budget, what is my, all of this will be streamlined. You will get 1 or 2 recommendations, like having the best executive assistant. And you just make the booking. And then when you go to your hotel, you don't need to go to check in. You have already checked in and you don't need to carry your bags from the airport. That happens automatically. So it will be at a level of personalization and streamlining that will unlock a lot of efficiencies. And if you look at traffic and the flow, and I think you will know this very well, let's say you're on the highway and you're driving, and then you come to a bottleneck and you say, what's going on? Is there an accident? And you move, and then the bottleneck resolves itself and you're free to drive again without anything happening. Why this happens is because when you have the capacity of the road, the moment you go even a little bit over the capacity, you have the bottleneck, everything stops, and you have these huge traffic jams. If you're able to take about 5% of the traffic out, there will be no bottlenecks, no traffic, everything flows. And it'll be a little bit similar, and it will compound whether you look at energy, transportation, experiences, all of these things. Humans, we're thinking linearly. Most things in nature, they're not linear. They're exponentially distributed. So and you have this, yeah, please.
So I could come to you from CMG and say, we need to create business models around all of the things that you've talked about. Because what you do is you talk about the movement of science, but you don't talk about the commercialization of science. Question would be, like Waze now, a good Israeli company that developed it, would take me around that traffic exam. My question is what's the business model for understanding how I travel? Is it the old travel agents? Is it the Hilton Hotel? Is it those kind of hotels who actually provide the commercialization of your data? Because what we'll do at CMG, we would take all of the ideas that you have and ask one question: how we can commercialize that. That is, who's interested in the movement of traffic? I think the hotels are. I think right now when I go home, I go home to New Orleans, I can pay $96 for a hotel tonight. But when Mardi Gras comes, I know intuitively it's going up to $800, right? So you could build all of that into the model, and you could predict, because everything starts with demography and people. When you start predicting the movement of people, you're looking at them going to different cities, you're looking at how they buy luggage, you're looking at all of these things. So if you came to CMG, we would say, look, we will create a business model for every kind of human behavior that we have. Because in innovation and entrepreneurship, everything starts with demography and where people move. Demography and where people move. And so just keep that in mind.
If I may address the question about the commercialization piece, because I would say money talks. Everybody knows it. At the end of the
sings
day,
and runs.
Pretty much, yes.
And that's the only thing that Llewellyn and I, that's the only thing that I am interested in, because I know America was born on commercialization and not the king and queen of England and who your blood is.
We're always pretty interested in commercial success. Let me direct you to some books which would tell you about the chartered companies and how that works. But I have a question for Panos, and that is, who are your customers? Which I think is what Johnny was asking you. Who's going to buy your service?
So we are very horizontal in our approach, so we can go very horizontal in lots of different industries. We have started from business events, trade shows, conferences, and so forth. And there are different motivations behind that. Let me start from the exhibitor example. So you are a company, you go to a trade show, you have a booth, you want to meet with potential customers that they have a need, and if it is a good fit, then you make a sale. It's good for the customer, it's good for you. So there you have thousands of people walking around your booth, and you want to attract attention to have a conversation which is relevant. Now, what design is the most effective for the booth? Do you know? You don't know. What experiences and which demos are the most effective and they have the biggest impact on visitors in your booth? You don't know. So what we do, we have this small device that you can connect it to a camera, and the camera will track the number of people walking in front of the booth and what percentage stops and looks. And then you can try different designs, and you can see what different stop rates you have per demographic, per show, and so forth. And we have seen that for every 1% increase in the stop rate, you have about 5% more leads collected. And when every lead has a value of tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars in value, being able to make people to stop, look, and come in, it's massive. That's the first part. Once they come in, we can measure their facial expressions to understand, are they having a good experience or not? Are there specific demos that work or some demos that need adjustment? Are there specific, interactions that speak to one demographic group but not the other? And you're optimizing, and this ends up having a very real impact on the bottom line. We worked with a Fortune 50 company, and we worked with them over 6 months on their booth, and they increased the number of demos they're offering by 294%. That's a massive increase in efficiency on the trade floor.
A quick follow-up, if I may. How big is your company, and is it publicly traded?
Oh, no, at least, but no. We're still very small. We're about 10, 12 people. So we spend a lot of time on the technology, and we have done a lot of work on the commercialization aspects, because the reality is you have to either make somebody money or you have to sell the money, or ideally both. So in some ways, by using this technology, you can help them make money by making the promotions more effective. You can justify ROI. So you're a sponsor of the show. How many people saw your banner? How many people saw the session? You're collecting analytics about traffic, demographics, dwell time, behavior, to actually be able to quantify. Digitally, when you are online, you can run an ad, you will see clicks, likes, views, hearts, purchases. You see the full sales funnel. For in-person experiences, you don't. You know it's working because when you put money there, you get results, and when you don't, you don't. But you cannot quantify what really drives the needle and what doesn't. So we're filling in this gap. So you can deploy it at amusement parks, at airports, at events, at retail stores. There are many use cases where you can put this technology in because it fills this gap. And even though everybody's talking about e-commerce, if you look at the numbers, in-store retail, brick and mortar, is still very, very strong, and it does not look like it's going away.
Sure.
It's the opposite.
Panos, tell us real quick. Hold on, guys. Tell us real quick, couple of customers, if you can talk about them. Who are they? What kind of deployment? What are they doing with the technology? How are they improving themselves?
So I mentioned one example as an exhibitor. I can mention another one. We cannot mention names, unfortunately. But for example, there is a Big Four accounting firm. I can say that, and we work with them in one of their biggest events. And in this conference, everybody is a CEO. Thousands of people, just CEOs. And they have this space, which is an immersive experience. And they're talking about the future of mobility, the future of this, the future of that, different experiences. And they want to understand traffic. They want to understand dwell time. They want to understand experience. And usually what they're doing, the event organizers, they're adding an RFID tag onto your badge, and then they're putting the antennas to understand where people go, or they're putting thrust and the antennas to detect movement. But this has the privacy challenges we have discussed. It's uniquely identifying individuals and so forth. So what I did instead the last time, we had this device which plugs into the camera. We are converting the video feed into group level statistics on the fly. So the video is never stored, it is never transmitted. The identity of the person is never extracted, but we can still tell what was the approximate number of people in the area, how long they stayed, how they were feeling, what was their demographic group. And then you can take this information for follow-up emails, sales emails, for creating better experiences. And at this level, you know what the sponsorships might be going at, and you know what the experience, what is the impact of creating a good brand experience and connection. That's an example. In retail, next week we are installing in 3 weeks in 3 stores in Miami. So they're spending all this money on online ads. Do they bring people in the store? Do we have a difference? Can we measure that? Which are the demographics that actually are coming to the store from the online ads? Because then we can allocate our budget a little bit more effectively. So instead of spending 10x, we can spend 5x to bring the traffic in, because we are promoting it to the right demographic groups. So these are some of the use cases we are doing. And this is how you have to go to the client and say, hey, you do this, that's the expected result. Test it, implement, verify, iterate.
Right.
And let me ask you a question here that takes you back to graduate school. What we generally do, we ask people, you've been to the hotel and do you like it, and et cetera, and et cetera. Because from your training that individual effects are different than the group effects.
Well, I love this question.
Right? Am I not right?
Yes. So I have to
you know where I'm going.
I know where you're going. I know where
I'm going. So my question is, it seemed like to me that when you aggregate the effects, and that is you're aggregating effects, and you're giving the customer group effects. Okay. Now, on the other hand, if you decompose those effects, right, at the individual level, you get different kinds of results, because sometimes, as you know, the group has an interesting crowd effect on what people think about things. Now, what you don't know is who's in that individual who don't want to be there. So how do you decompose the effects? Or are you just giving me the wrong effect? Now, this is a good PhD question that I'll ask any PhD in statistics. I want to hear you. Wait a minute, I'm grading.
Let's do it. If I get an A, what do I get? Is a reward?
You might get to come back. No, you see what I'm saying. So I'm paying for your services. And we know that group effects produce something and individual effects produce other things. We just know that, right? So how do you handle that? That's a good question. Well,
I absolutely love this question. By the way, we get it all the time from all customers. So that's why I have such an easy response ready. So 2 things. The first thing, there's a statistics book. I don't remember the title, but it says it has a Sherlock Holmes reference that says one person cannot predict what another person is thinking, but they can predict what a group of people might be thinking. So in a similar fashion, if we have 10,000 impressions, 10,000 potential individuals, and we see that when they see display A, they like it. And when you have 10,000 impressions and display B, they don't like it, you know that this one works better. The potential for error is so small that you can make determinations on what will work better on average versus what will not work better on average. That's the first thing.
Because of the law of large numbers. Because of the law
exactly,
of large numbers.
Exactly. And that's why we had brands asking us to do focus groups. We tested it and we realized it doesn't work, because in a focus group, you have one dominant voice in affecting everybody else, and you only have 5 people. It's very hard with 5 people to make inferences. That's the first part. The second part is the following. When we detect a face, let's say we detect my face, and I move around, as long as I stay in the field of view, we can say that this is the same face based on position and movement. If I leave and I come back, we start again. But as long as I stay in the field of view, we know it is the same face. And every second, we analyze my face multiple times. And then what we do, like let's say I stayed a minute, we might have 600, 1,000 samples for my face. And then we are looking at the duration, the intensity, and the distribution of the data to make an inference if a person had a good experience or not. So even if your resting face, somebody's, by default very smiling, somebody else is not, This is mitigated, not entirely, but to a great extent, we can mitigate this effect.
I do understand that, and in
Can-
sports, we
Can
call
I
it
ask
body language.
this?
We call it
If-
body language. I've been
Hold
pulling
on, a
games.
minute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, I want to ask if your technology were used in the State of the Union address last night, could you tell us whether it really succeeded or failed and what people how they really reacted to it?
I am smiling because we have been doing political events at this level. I cannot say whom or what or anything else, but we do work at this level quite often. And it is striking how accurate the system is at understanding people's sentiment. You always need to have some context. So, for example, if it is a serious topic, you will not see positive sentiment through the roofs. It doesn't mean it is not effective. But there are other ways of understanding if the message hit the mark or not, if they are following the speaker or not. And beyond that, we can also say, if I give a talk to a large audience, I can say, did I say something that maybe offended, male people below the age of 20? So this is the granularity at which we can get. And we can say the analysis minute by minute. So yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you. Sorry, Johnny.
We do this in everyday kind of issues. Like I said, it's, you can really see it in sports. I mean, when you pull a player, because you look at the body language.
Mm-hmm.
When you meet a woman, you look at the body language. When you shop, you look at body language. So the theoretical application is the impact of where they are on their body language.
Mm-hmm.
Bars, you can body language. So you can expand the commercialization of what you do. It would be wonderful, just look at the person's body language. I can sit in a meeting and understand the body language, or I can play golf with you for 18 holes and understand your personality completely. I mean, if you get angry, just hit the ball. If you get angry, I don't want to be around you. So my point, I think, is a good thing, but I think that thinking through the business models for the application of facial recognition. And my other question is, how does facial recognition interact with other things? I know it's interacting with the environment, but how does it interact with other things that you guys can measure?
So I absolutely love this question. So this device, one of the best things we have done. So it has 3 benefits. You don't have to have internet bandwidth for video, which is very, very heavy. The cost is very, very low because you don't process video in the cloud, and the privacy security implications, they're massive because you eradicate a lot of the problems there. But one of my favorite features is we have remote updates. The same way you can update your phone with an app, a laptop, your Tesla, we can download more AI models. So one mode is scanning faces. We have another mode for scanning the name badges if you want to have lead collection. We are adding voice analysis so you can understand how something was said or how frequently it was said. And we are adding mobile tracking, being able to detect the number of unique phones around the device. And next year, we're looking to do the body posture as well on top of everything. So there's great extensibility in everything like that. Yes.
So your interaction effects would be more valuable than your individual. We're looking at it.
And to go one step further, you can
let me
connect the
just say
device.
interaction effect for the audience. I mean, they have the facial recognition and they have another variable. And interaction
multiple
effect.
variables.
Right.
So I want to go in a different direction. Panos, one of the things that I really is interesting about the technology, and we had it at Digital 360 Summit. Most of you didn't notice it. They were invited into our startup showcase, and they had the technology there, and we got some amazing results out of that. One of my curiosity is, if I'm a speaker, which I get invited to speak all the time, I have a panel this afternoon that I'm speaking at. How could I understand in an hour speech or a half-hour speech what's going on, and could I get a feedback real time? Are you working on this so that I can, as a comedian, as a talk show host, as a moderator, as a whatever, I can get the feedback and fine-tune what I'm doing?
All of our data is real time, and going back to the political events I mentioned previously, they are very serious. So when they're doing rallies and they have multiple speakers, if somebody's killing the mood, they're just taking the speaker down and they're changing things up to bring back the energy. So it is already working in real time to be able to make changes. And one other thing we do, we have an HDMI port, which means you can connect the device to any display, and we can give prompts to a speaker. We can create targeted ads in retail. You can control the environment. We can control lights. We can add music. You can create, when I was talking about the personalized experience before, that's exactly where we're going, on being able to create the whole environment tailored to you.
I love that. I love that. What about, well, hold on, Johnny, you're muted. What about working with, what about the ability of working with Nielsen? And a Nielsen family is watching a show. Why not having your cameras while they're watching the show and add that to the Nielsen database?
Oh, they should. I keep saying that Nielsen is a good company to buy us out potentially, or partner with us, because it's the natural extension. And we talk to the consumer insights a lot, and they're always telling us, very valuable the reports we're getting, but they're coming late, or they're aggregated and they're not for a specific store, a specific activation. So, and they're not real time. So this is where the two can complement well. And to go back to John's point, we do always say, don't rely only on one data source. Look at the sentiment data from Faces, look at the surveys, look at the testimonials, took all of it together. And when everything points in the same direction, that's when you know you have a home run.
Llewellyn?
I find this all very interesting. And I wonder how you diagnose the facial expression, because people, people can be very happy. I mean, Johnny Butler is absolutely ecstatic when I'm talking, but sometimes the sour expression on his face belies that fact. Now, how do you deal with that kind of contradiction?
So the first thing is the following. A lot of companies, they're trying to analyze facial expressions tied to emotion for a specific individual, which we established it's not a good idea. And second, they're trying to predict anger, disgust, and so forth. What we have found from our data is that when you're trying to go so specific in expressions which are infrequent, you might not get very good results. So instead, the way we have trained the system is to look at positive facial expressions. The obvious one is smiles, laughs, smirks, but also surprise. Surprise can be positive or negative. We can distinguish between the two. So we're analyzing the expressions focusing on positivity, because this is more general, more frequent, and it has lots of different ways of being expressed. And we're analyzing faces multiple times per second, over long times of period, lots of people. And then when you get to this level, it's extremely unlikely that somebody will be laughing when there's nothing to laugh about. Or you'll have 5,000 people all having positive expressions towards something when there's no reason to have a positive facial expression towards something. So it's the big numbers, it's the way all the details have been built, the individualization and the aggregation and the context. The context is very, very important.
I have a final question, Panos, and that is there a superb, expensive Greek restaurant in Austin? Because Dr. Butler, who's very wealthy, wants to take me and everyone else to a very, very grand dinner. And I love Greek food, especially lamb.
Actually, I did not eat Greek food in the US because when you're used to the original thing, it is very, very hard to compromise.
Well, maybe we could get a chef come in from Athens. I mean, Dr. Butler's in the chair.
I can cook for you guys. I can cook for you guys. And actually, we had a board meeting last week, and I brought a Greek drink that grows in an island, Chios. It is the only place I know of where this tree grows and this process is made. And everybody loved it. So maybe I can cook for you guys and we can try this drink.
There you go.
We'll take you up. We'll take you up.
Let's do it.
Are you talking about mastica? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, very good.
I love
very
mastica.
good.
I love mastica.
It's very, very good. Yes.
Yeah, it's an amazing drink. It's an amazing
Johnny, you're still
drink.
muted.
Johnny, you're muted. You're muted. You're muted. Johnny, you're
I
muted.
just said you can't do a poker game. Can you do a poker game?
Ooh, I love poker.
You do a poker game where you can make a whole lot of money doing a poker game. Okay.
You-
But I think this is very, very good. I think you have a lot, right now you're in the science of it. I don't think you've thought much about the application for business. And I also think that it would be big in law enforcement, as it is now, by the way.
Mhm.
It would be big in the commercialization of clothing, as it is now. It would be big in the commercialization of transportation. It would be big now. It would be big in terms of people getting off of airplanes to understand the expression and how the flight was. So I think if you think through the business models, what you're saying is we don't have to ask a question. Oh, you went to buy a guitar today. How did you like the experience? You can look at the experience right by the face expression. So what that does is take those people out of business. Okay, well, it's been good. And remember the assignments. Don't be surprised.
I do. I will watch the video again, not everything down. But yeah.
Panos, thank you for being with us today. We can stay forever talking to you, and we will have you back. I've always found you and your team a very, very personable and great team, super smart people. You guys are going to make a huge influence, impact. I look forward to watching your journey. Gentlemen, final words.
Very interesting. I'd love to sit down and talk to you about the positive impacts in the out years of artificial intelligence. I think we're going to start looking at the positive impact, not shying, as I tend instinctively to do, away from it. And you certainly started us down that path. Thank you.
I love your idea. You just need to eat some Creole Cajun foods to replace the Greek food.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Some gumbo, some etouffee, some boudin. I tell you what, it's nothing like it.
I'm having lamb campana. You can
Panos,
Zach,
final thoughts. What's in front of you the next 90 days, 180 days? What's in front of you?
So right now we are at the stage where we are growing revenue. We're announcing some very, very big partnerships because the way we go about the market is we found market alternatives, surveys, RFID, BLE, NFC technologies, where we can do the same thing, but much, much better at a lower cost, because that's how you make a big impact. When you don't have to educate the market, but you're using an existing use case, you're doing the same thing better, faster, cheaper. And that's what we're doing. So today we announced we hired our marketing director. We're adding more people in the sales team. And right now we're just growing the sales and marketing division. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you for being with us. Johnny, take us away.
No, being chill in the village. It's quiet and still. I took a walk through the fallen leaves, the fishery, where my old friend Pagliacci had coffee for me. Over the cobblestone of the town, picking apples that were strewn on the ground. I could hear the sound of the surf and the cry of the seagull. All over our cheeks at the edge of the wall. All the surfers in the mountain towns, they're gone and it's peaceful and calm. The people will still pull out the sandbags. The high tides will not, whatever is changed, and November fade away.
I'll have to do the food. John, you bring the guitar. I think we're going to have a good time.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. This is good. Thank you all very much. Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, gentlemen.